viewers that we'll have eventually. Okay, well, good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you here again. We're among friends today, but well, I'd like to introduce today's session, which is about the Nightingale and the Rose, a commentary by Jacques Sagot. Today we have the last session of this, our third season of Ink and Insight, and we'll have a pause. We'll make a pause, and then we'll start again on August the 12th. So we'll send you the information. I think we have your emails and your phone number, so we'll be sending you the information later. Without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Master Sagot, and let's give him a round of applause, as we normally do, so that he feels encouraged.
Thank you very much, very much. Well, we'll have a especially beautiful class today, because since we're few, that should translate itself into more quality in the experience, I would like to think. So, we'll start with a little bit of music. Is that okay? Thank you very much. That's a little tango composed by myself.
Really?
Yeah, and played. Yep, the Ophelia tango that I dedicated to a very good friend. She's a great tango dancer, great tango fan. Well, welcome to the world of Oscar Wilde. Oscar Fingal of Flaherty Wills Wilde. What's his complete name, in case you wanna use it for a son, or for, or for a dog, whatever, a cat, parrot. Oscar Fingal Flaherty Wills Wilde. He was Irish, not English. He was Irish. He was born in Dublin. Irish, like James Joyce. That's an important thing. And he was born in 1854, died in 1900, just with the sunrise of the new century. He died, aged 46. Oscar Wilde is such a legend. such a legend. Several movies have been dedicated to his biography. You know, the man with the white carnation was one that was famous from back in the 60s, I believe, because he was a dandy. He was a dandy. He cultivated the aesthetic and the ethics of the dandy. Elegance, supremely refined kind of person, you know, very well dressed with a white carnation. Actually, it was probably green rather than white, but the painting we have of him shows a white carnation in the ojal all the time. You know, that was like one of his trademarks, you know, and. He was a dandy, yes, he was a hero in the social, high-class bourgeois milieus of London in the second half of the century. He was a social hero. He was very much a social butterfly. I mean, he was all over the place, you know. He was the favorite, you know, raconteur, storyteller, famous for his wit and his irony and his ingenuity and his sense of humor. He was very, very sharp, very, very sharp. He was famous for his phrases, his epigrams, his you know, you can buy books made up of quotations, of citations from him. He has a tremendous sense for the formula, for the very sharp thought, you know, encapsulating in just a few very extremely well-chosen words. I remember one, he said, I love to talk, and I love listening to myself, and I am so intelligent that sometimes I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. There's hundreds of phrases by him like that one. He was absolutely adorable. And yes, he was homosexual, as everybody knows. He was gay, indeed, a kind of a pioneer and a cult figure, a venerated figure in the gay community nowadays. And he fell in love deeply and completely, you know, intensely in love with Sir Alfred Douglas, a.k.a. Bosie, known as Bosie. Well, Bosie was, of course, as gay as one can be, but no, because Wilde was bisexual. You know, he married. He had a wife, and he had two children, a boy and a daughter. Attention to that. He started his life trying to be a good, normal bourgeois, you know, pro-system kind of bourgeois. I mean, he fooled himself and he fooled the world for a while, until came, you know, Bosie, Sir Alfred Douglas. I know Sir Alfred Douglas, I mean, poor Wilde, he was so profoundly in love with him, and for all we know, he was not deserved. He did not deserve that degree of adoration. He was a spoiled brat, you know, selfish, superficial guy, you know. But, you know, that's the way love is, you know. Sir Alfred Douglas was the son of a very powerful political figure, the Marquis of Queensberry. And at some point, Alfred Douglas hated his father because his father, of course, did not approve of his sexual penchant. So the boy hated his father. At some point, Alfred Douglas, succeeded to engage Oscar Wilde in a trial against his own father, against the Marquis of Queensberry, and kind of blindly.
This is the photos.
Those are photos of him.
Yes.
Yeah, very elegant man. Yeah, very spectacularly elegant man. Oh, I mean, Oscar Wilde, he was the kind of guy that, even if in a party, in a saloon, you know, he came with a particular kind of fashion, you know. The next week, everybody in London was imitating him. He was not the type of man who follows a moda. He was rather the kind of guy who creates the moda, you know, the fashion.
Trendsetter.
Yes, very much, yeah. Oh, yeah. He was the talk of the town. All the time he was the talk of the town. So how did Oscar Wilde show up at last night's party? So we can imitate him for the whole next week, you know. He had tremendous power. And, Alfred Douglas succeeded in persuading Wilde to bring the Marquis of Queensberry to a trial. Oscar Wilde did it. He lost the trial, he lost it, and exposed himself to a counterattack, to a vicious counterattack by the Marquis of Queensberry. And the Marquis simply buried him of all sort of evidence. He brought pictures, He brought the testimony of many male prostitutes of the time to give testimony of Wilde's promiscuous kind of behavior. We will never know if that was true or not, but the jury decided it was true. And he was condemned to 2 years in the prison of Reading, 2 years of hard labors with the worst kind of people in England, That prince of the poets, that dandy, that sublime spirit, coexisting in those jails overcrowded with the worst kind of people, It was terrible. It was a horrible thing. 2 years in the prison of Reading. He, in fact, wrote a poem called The Ballad of the Prison of Reading. And he wrote the famous letter De Profundis, which means from the depths, especially addressed to Alfred Douglas, filled with reproaches of all sorts, but very beautifully expressed, All that has remained, and we can read it just anytime we want, Both texts are very beautiful. So he spent 2 years doing hard labors. He got into a fight with some vicious inmate. He punched him in the nose. Oscar Wilde felt. He hurt his ear. A tumor started to grow in his ear inside as a result of that stupid quarrel, and that resulted into a meningitis that killed him at age 46 in 1900. He died in Paris. He had to go into exile to Paris. But after he was convicted of, officially, the charges was gross indecency. That's what he was convicted for, gross indecency. After that, Oscar Wilde basically dried up. His genius dried up. His verbal skills dried up. He lost everything a man can lose. He lost his house. He lost his wife. He lost his children. He lost his bibliothèque, where he had volumes autographed by all the great writers of the century, Mallarmé, Verlaine, Proust, just name it, Benito Pérez Galdós, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Henry James, just name it, So he lost his good name. He fell in total disgrace in London society, He was signaled by everybody. There goes the booger, there goes the faggot, horrible, a nightmare. And even his name, because the library and the merchants of books were very smart. They knew Oscar Wilde sold very well. So they kept selling his books while taking out his name. So the importance of being Ernst, or An Ideal Husband, or The Ghost of Canterville, or The Picture of Dorian Gray, or Mr. Windermere's, El Abanico de Mrs. Windermere's, all those wonderful plays, were there, but without the name Oscar Wilde. He even lost the paternity to his own books, which is particularly cruel, cruel. So people kept making lots of money out of his books, but taking out the name. He lost absolutely everything. He spent his last 2 years in misery, in poverty, living in Paris in poor, old, tattered hotels, drinking, smoking. The old dandy had become almost like a homeless kind of guy. There were holes in here and his knees, awful. André Gide knew him intimately during that time, and he said he was like the ghost of Oscar Wilde. He was the ghost of a gone great figure. He was very pathetic. He had a very sad end. As things happened, Sir Alfred Douglas followed him to Paris and kept pestering him, even in Paris, asking for money, asking for works of art that were very expensive. Oscar Wilde had no money. I mean, he parasited Wilde until the last day of his life. It was very sad. Oscar Wilde is buried in the Père Lachaise cemetery. I have visited his tomb. It's a very beautiful tomb. It's kind of, it's not in the ground. It's kind of held high in sort of a monumental base sculpture. It was visited so often. It had so much graffiti, so much lipstick from kisses. And he was so honored and so full and so painted and so full of things by the gay community that they had to do a nettoyage. They cleansed the whole tomb and they put it inside of a sort of bell of ice, a transparent ice bell, so to cover it, to make it easy to be cleansed, because it was a graffiti, completely, unbelievable thing, Now there is another tomb that's like that. That's Jim Morrison, isn't it? Jim Morrison is buried, the rock and roll guy. He's buried and he died in Paris. Isn't he? ¿Verdad que sí? He's also buried in Père Lachaise. Everybody's in Père Lachaise. I mean, we should all end up in Père Lachaise, I would expect. Manuel, Isaac, have you made your reservations? If you're famous, you have to be in Père Lachaise. If you're not in Père Lachaise, something went wrong. And I have spent hours there. Hours in the Père Lachaise, visiting absolutely everybody. Everybody. It's a wonderful experience. Not that I'm a necrophile. No, not at all, Manuel, not at all. I go there because European museums, at least Parisian museums, are in a way like cemeteries are like museums. In a way, they're like museums. You find so many kinds of crosses, so many kinds of vaults, of crypts, of all sorts of things, epigraphs, all sorts of things. It's very impressive, and one learns a lot about statuary art and architecture and all sorts of things. It's very interesting, very interesting.
Victor Hugo there as well?
Victor Hugo is not there. No? Victor Hugo is in a special place, a temple, called the Pantheon. Pantheon, all the gods. All pantheos, all the gods. So there is Victor Hugo, Rousseau, Voltaire, Alexandre Dumas, the author of the Count of Monte Cristo, Pierre Curie, Marie Curie, all the important people are there. That's the place I would expect to. So we have yes, I'm a little bit, unrealistic here. The Nightingale and the Rose. Now, this is a short story that's written in a style so beautiful that it is almost like poetic prose, what Pablo Neruda would have called proesía. Pablo Neruda hablaba de proesía, a hybrid form between prose and poetry. Yes. It's a very beautiful prose. It's a prose that you can tell was written by a poet. And indeed, I mean, what did Oscar Wilde? He wrote poetry, he wrote plays, he was a wonderful playwright, he wrote novels, he wrote short stories, fairy tales, essays, he cultivated all the genres, all the forms. So here we go. She said that she would dance with me if I brought her her red roses, cried the young student. But in all my garden there is no red rose. From her nest in the holm oak tree, the nightingale heard him, and she looked out through the leaves and wondered. No red rose in all my garden, he cried, and his beautiful eyes filled with tears. Ah, what little thing does happiness depend? I have read all that the wise men have written, and all the secret of philosophy are mine, yet for want of red rose is my life made wretched. Here at last is a true lover, said the nightingale. Night after night I have sung of him, though I knew him not. Night after night have I told his story to the stars, and now I see him. His dark hair is the hyacinth blossom, and his lips are red as the roses of his desire. But passion has made his face like pale ivory, and sorrow has set her seal upon his brow. The prince gives a ball tomorrow night, murmured the young student, and my love will be of the company. If I bring her a red rose, she will dance with me till dawn. If I bring her a red rose, I shall hold her in my arms, and she will lean her head upon my shoulder, and her hand will be clasped by mine. But there is no red rose in my garden, so I shall sit lonely, and she will pass by me. She will have no need of me, and my heart will break. Here indeed is the true lover, said the nightingale. What I sing of, he suffers. What is joy to me, to him is pain. Surely love is a wonderful thing. It is more precious than emeralds, and dearer than fine opals. Pearls and pomegranates cannot buy it, nor is it set forth in the marketplace. It may not be repurchased of the merchants, nor can it be weighed out in the balance for gold. The musicians will sit in their gallery, said the young student, and play upon their stringed instruments, and my love will dance to the sound of the harp and the violin. She will dance so lightly that her feet will not touch the floor, and the courtiers in their gay dresses will throng round her. But with me she will not dance, for I have no red rose to give her. And he flung himself down on the grass and buried his face in his hands and wept. Why is he weeping? Asked a little green lizard as he ran past him with his tail in the air. Why indeed, said a butterfly who was fluttering about after a sunbeam. Why indeed, whispered a daisy to his neighbor in a soft, low voice. This is very much a resource that you can find very often in fairy tales, the repetition of things, you know. El ratón Pérez se murió en la olla y la cucharita manchinga lo llora y lo ¿cómo es que dice el cuento? Que se repite y se repite y se repite, ¿verdad? Muy típico de los cuentos de hadas. Hermano mío, no toques ni dejes de tocar, que mis hermanos me han matado por la flor del olivar, y se repite y se repite y se repite. Usually 3 times. It's a feature that has been studied by Jorge Luis Borges. Because in fairy tales, everything goes in three, in groups of 3. Everything is tripartite, you know. Funny, it's triadic. Very interesting. He's weeping for a red rose, said the nightingale. For a red rose, they cried. How very ridiculous. And the little lizard, who was something of a cynic, laughed outright. But the nightingale understood the secret of the student's sorrow, and she sat silent in the oak tree and thought about the mystery of love. Suddenly, she spread her brown wings for flight and soared into the air. She passed through the grove like a shadow, and like a shadow she sailed across the garden. In the center of the grass plot was standing a beautiful rose tree, and when she saw it, she flew over it and lit upon a spray. Now notice the nightingale is a her. The nightingale is she. Now, normally, in the case of birds, they're considered gender neuter. They're not females, they're not males, you know. In the nightingale, the particular case of nightingales, the bird who sounds so beautiful, nightingales, you know, Nachtigallen, rossignol, ruiseñores, roxinol, you know. It's the male, the one who sings beautiful. Not so much the female is the male. And yet, when you talk about nightingales, it's usually a her. I mean, it usually goes feminine in gender. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. My roses are white, it answered, as white as the foam of the sea and whiter than the snow upon the mountain. But go to my brother, who grows round the old sundial, and perhaps he will give you what you want. So the nightingale flew over the rose tree that was growing around the old sundial. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. My roses are yellow, it answered, as yellow as the hair of the mermaid who sits upon an amber throne, and yellower than the daffodil that blooms in the meadow before the mower comes with his sight. But go to my brother who grows beneath this window, and perhaps he will give you what you want. So you see, again, 3. So the nightingale flew over the rose tree that was growing beneath the student's window. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. My roses are red, it answered. As red as the feet of the dove, and redder than the great fans of coral that wave and wave in the ocean cavern. But the winter has chilled my veins, and the frost has nipped my buds, and the storm has broken my branches, and I shall have no roses at all this year. Now notice how Oscar Wilde uses permanently, systematically, the literary figure known as a simile. A simile is not a metaphor. We have talked about that in the past. If I say, the red strawberries of your lips, that's a metaphor. If I say, your red lips are beautiful as roses or strawberries, that's a simile. Simile necesita la partícula como, ¿verdad? Tus labios son rojos como flores silvestres. Es el como, la partícula conectiva. Cuando decís, tus labios son rosas silvestres, es una metáfora. Entonces, lo que Oscar Wilde usa es el como. Like, you know. My roses are red, it answered, as red as the feet of the dove, and redder than the great fans of coral that wave and wave in the ocean cavern. But the winter has chilled my veins, and the frost has nipped my buds, and the storm has broken my branches, and I shall have no roses all this year. One rose is all I want, cried the Nightingale. One only rose. Is there no way I can get it? There is a way, answered the tree, but it is so terrible that I dare not tell it to you. Tell it to me, said the Nightingale. I'm not afraid. If you want a rose, said the tree, you must build it out of music by moonlight and stain it with your own heart's blood. You must sing to me with your breast against a thorn. All night long you must sing to me, and the thorn must pierce your heart, and your life blood must flow into my veins and become mine. How beautiful in English, you know. Must pierce, atravesar, punzar, pierce. It's a very sharp word. It's a very sharp sounding word. Death is a great price to pay for a rose, cried the Nightingale, and life is very dear to all. It is pleasant to sit in the green wood and to watch the sun in his chariot of gold and the moon in her chariot of pearl. Sweet is the scent of the hawthorn, and sweet are the bluebells that hide in the valley, and the heather that blows on the hill. Yet love is better than life. And what is the heart of a bird compared to the heart of a man? Beautiful. Very generous Nightingale, huh? Very generous. So she spread her brown wings for flight and soared into the air. She swept over the garden like a shadow, and like a shadow she sailed through the grove. The young student was still lying on the grass where she had left him, and the tears were not yet drying his beautiful eyes. Be happy, cried the Nightingale. Be happy. You shall have your red rose. I will build it out of music by moonlight and stain it with my own heart's blood. All that I ask of you in return is that you'll be a true lover, for love is wiser than philosophy, though she is wise, and mightier than power, though he is mighty. Flame color are his wings, and color like flame is his body. His lips are sweet as honey, and his breath is like frankincense. His lips are sweet as honey. Como, todo es como. Muy lindo. There's an effect of repetition, reiteration, that's kind of hypnotic, accumulative. The student looked up into the grass and listened, but he could not understand what the Nightingale was saying to him, for he only knew the things that were written down in books. But the oak tree understood and felt sad, for he was very fond of the little Nightingale who had built her nest in his branches. Sing me one last song, he whispered. I shall feel very lonely when you're gone. So the Nightingale sang to the oak tree, and her voice was like water bubbling from a silver jar. When she had finished her song, the student got up and pulled a notebook and a lead pencil out of his pocket. She has form, he said to himself, very pedantic, you know. She has form, he said to himself, as he walked away from the grove. That cannot be nigh to her, but has she got feeling? I'm afraid not. In fact, she's like most artists. She's all style without any sincerity. That's the ultimate horror, you know. She would not sacrifice herself for others. She thinks merely of music, and everybody knows that the arts are selfish. Still, it must be admitted that she has some beautiful notes in her voice. What a pity is that they do not mean anything or do any practical good. And he went into his room and lay down on his little pale bed and began to think of his love. And after a time, he fell asleep. And when the moon shone in the heavens, the nightingale flew to the rose tree and set her breast against the thorn. All night long she sang with her breast against the thorn, and the cold crystal moon leaned down and listened. Notice the capital letters used in moon, as if she was a character, you know. All night long she sang, and the thorn went deeper and deeper into her breast, and her lifeblood ebbed away from her. Again, deeper, deeper, pierce, you know. She sang first of the birth of love in the heart of a boy and a girl. And on the topmost spray of the rose tree there blossomed a marvelous rose, petal following petal, as song followed song. Pale was it at first, as the mist that hangs over the river, pale as the feet of the morning, and silver as the wings of the dawn. As the shadow of a rose in a mirror of silver, as the shadow of a rose in a water pool, so was the rose that blossomed on the topmost spray of the tree. But the tree cried to the nightingale to press closer against this thorn. Press closer, little nightingale, cried the tree, or the day will come before the rose is finished. So the nightingale pressed closer against the thorn, and louder grew her song, for she sang of the birth of passion in the soul of a man and a maid. And a delicate flush of pink came into the leaves of the rose, like the flush in the face of the bridegroom when he kisses the lips of the bride. But the thorn had not yet reached her heart, so the rose's heart remained white, for only a nightingale's heart blood can crimson the heart of a rose. Can crimson the heart of a rose. As usual in English, crimson, it's an adjective, you know, but it's used here in the function of a verb. That's very, very English, you know. Only a nightingale's heart's blood can crimson the heart of a rose. And the tree cried to the nightingale to press closer against the thorn. Press closer, little nightingale, cried the tree, or the day will come before the rose is finished. So the nightingale pressed closer against the thorn, and the thorn touched her heart, and a fierce pang of pain shot through her. Bitter was the pain, and wilder grew her song, for she sang of the love that is perfected by death, of love that dies not in the tomb. And the marvelous rose became crimson, like the rose of the eastern sky. Crimson was the girdle of petals, and crimson was a ruby was the heart. But the nightingale's voice grew fainter, and her little wings began to beat, and a film came over her eyes. Fainter and fainter grew her song, and she felt something choking her in the throat. Then she gave one last burst of music. The white moon heard it, and she forgot the dawn and lingered on in the sky. The red rose heard it, and it trembled all over with ecstasy and opened its petals to the cold morning air. Echo bore it to her purple cavern in the hills and woke the sleeping shepherds from their dreams. It floated through the red reeds of the river, and they carried its message to the sea. "Look, look," cried the tree, "the rose is finished now." But the nightingale made no answer, for she was lying dead in the long grass, with the thorn in her heart. And at noon the student opened his window and looked out. "Why, what a wonderful piece of luck," he cried. "Here is a red rose. I have never seen any rose like it in all my life. It is so beautiful that I'm sure it has a long Latin name." What a pedantry. "It is so beautiful, I'm sure it has a long Latin name." I mean, he was a student, you know, a university student. He was a kind of a brainiac, you know, guy. He lived in books, you know. And he leaned down and plucked it. Then he put it on his hat and ran up to the professor's house with the rose in his hand. The daughter of the professor was sitting in the doorway winding blue silk on a reel, and her little dog was lying at her feet. "You said that you would dance with me if I brought you a red rose," cried the student. "Here's the reddest rose in all the world. You will wear it tonight next to your heart, and as we dance together, it will tell you how I love you." But the girl frowned. I'm afraid it will not go with my dress, she answered. And besides, the Chamberlain's nephew has sent me some real jewels, and everybody knows that jewels cost far more than flowers. Well, upon my word, you're very ungrateful, said the student angrily, and he threw the rose into the street, where it fell into a gutter, and a cartwheel went over it. Ungrateful, said the girl. I tell you what, you're very rude. And after all, you are, well, why are you? You're just a student, only a student. Why, I don't believe you haven't got silver buckles into your shoes like the Chamberlain nephew has. And she got from her chair and went into the house. What a silly thing love is, said the student as he walked away. It's not half as useful as logic, for it does not prove anything. And it is always telling one of things that are not going to happen and making one believe things that are not true. In fact, it is quite unpractical. And in this age, to be practical is everything. I shall go back to philosophy and study metaphysics. So he returned to his room and pulled out a great dusty book and began to read. Now, this has got to be one of the cruelest stories I ever heard. As it's cruel to the bottom of my heart. It pains me. It aches to read it, you know. The sacrifice of the nightingale. I mean, he pushed all night long against the thorn of the rose tree till the thorn pierced his heart. And with his heart's blood, the nightingale tainted the whole rose. That rose was a work of art, yes, for the nightingale died singing her most beautiful song. I mean, the moon itself stopped in the firmament to look at that wonderful rose and to hear that song, a song of love, literally. You know, it was also a work of love. It was a work of sacrifice. That's the key word here. The sacrifice of a nightingale. A little bird that's an emblem of the poet who gives his very best to society and is sometimes despised or looked upon with indifference. I mean, yeah, so Jacques writes some short stories, and so what? I rather use he doesn't have the jackets that the son of the Chamberlain has. You know, thanks God we don't have Chamberlains here in Costa Rica, you know. But you know, it's terrible. It's a terrible story. It's very cruel. And Oscar Wilde does nothing to attenuate that impact, that sense. I mean, when you end reading this, you end up with a feeling of injustice. You feel restless. You feel uncomfortable. You feel indignant. You feel, well, this bitch should be decapitated. The student is an idiot. He didn't understand what needed to be understood. He's a stupid idiot, arrogant little prick. And the Chamberlain is probably a completely obsolete court guy. And I mean, the only here who comes as a real hero is the nightingale. Nachtigallen, a bird that's synonymous of music. In all over German poetry, be it Goethe, Schiller, Hölderlin, von Kleist, Brentano, Chamisso, Eichendorff, just name it. They're filled. Nachtigallen are all over the place. It's the most frequently mentioned little animal in German poetry. Anyway, in France also, all over the place. Ruiseñor, un ruiseñor. And then you do remember the famous movie To Kill a Mockingbird. Remember Gregory Peck playing Atticus. Atticus Finch, you remember, Lily? Atticus, wonderful. Gregory Peck at his very best.
I cried and cried.
So what a movie. What a movie. Scout, the girl. You know, I met that, not the girl. I mean, she was, she was already an old lady, but she'd spent her life lecturing all over the United States. So she came to Rice University, where I was a student, talking about the South, you know, the cotton plantations, the racism against the negritude of the South of the United States. She became quite a spokesperson for that, for civil rights, you know. And I had a pleasure. I mean, I just saw her, and not that we exchange email addresses or anything like that, you know. Scout, yes. Harper Lee. Harper Lee, To Kill a Mockingbird, you know. Oh my God, what a wonderful scenes in the court. You know, Gregory Peck, more majestic. I mean, Gregory Peck had that dignity. He was a very dignified, elegant man, you know. Like those old-fashioned actors of yore, of the long-gone times of yore. Well, To Kill a Mockingbird, I mean, what's the point of killing a mockingbird? It would be the ultimate crime. Well, here we have a mockingbird, we have Nightingale, but his sacrifice ends up being pointless, being useless. Is not appreciated by the girl at all, nor by the student, but I blame more heavily the student. And the end of the story is ironic, you know. It's ironic, you know. Oh, what a silly thing love is, said the student as he walked away. It's not half as useful as logic, for it does not prove anything. I mean, does love prove anything? Well, love proves that one is capable of loving, you know. And love isn't about to prove this or the other, nor is logic particularly useful in pragmatical terms. You know, you don't use the Bertrand Russell formal logic to live your life. Not really. And then it does not prove anything, and he's always telling one things that are not going to happen and making one believe things that are not true. In fact, it is quite unpractical. And as in the age of be practical is everything, I shall go back to philosophy and study metaphysics. Now, is that practical? No. I mean, he said, I will back to the study of law, of computer engineering. I'm going to become a Microsoft expert or some kind of, now that I will understand that, you know. But so, since I want to be practical and pragmatic, I will go back to the study of philosophy and metaphysics. For Christ's sake, that's the most unpractical thing in the world. I tell you one thing. My father was not very enthusiastic when I told him that I wanted to be a pianist, you know. But I ended up being a pianist, nevertheless. He always insisted me, you should have a second weapon, a second instrument, you know, because the music alone is going to be very fluctuating. Plus, you're a classical pianist. It's not like you're going to be much in demand. Now, he was brutally realistic, and he still is, by the way. And, well, following his wise advice, I decided to get a second doctorate in French cultural studies. Comme quoi, I had two perfectly futile doctorates. One be more useless than the other, you know. French cultural studies, and basically French philosophy and literature and history and all that stuff, you know. And the other was music, you know, classical music, can you imagine? And the poor man, my father is an economist, was a very distinguished economist. Yeah, he's an economist. His dream was to create a firm, Sagot and Son. That was his dream. Poor guy, I mean, poor guy. I totally disappointed him, you know. I was the black sheep of the family. No, he's very proud of me. He became later on, when I proved that I was rather good at what I did, he started, you know, respecting me. And he loves me very much, and I love him very much. Tremendously so. Oh, both my father and my mother are still alive, you know, 87 and 86. Yeah. So this Rossignol, this Nightingale, can be seen as an allegory or a parable, if you prefer, of the artist that gives it all and sometimes is completely unappreciated. Now, Baudelaire has a little, he calls them poems en prose, poems in prose, in a little volume that's called Le Spleen de Paris, Paris' spleen. And I'm going to say this in Spanish. He's one of those little poems in prose, as contradictory as it may sound, has one that's called El Perro y el Frasco. And it goes pretty much like this. Ayer fui al mercado y me compré un frasco de perfume formado con las más deliciosas especias y fragancias de Oriente, con exquisitas esencias, un perfume mágico que me costó la mitad de mi salario. Llegué a casa, llegó mi perro moviendo el rabito, que según entiendo en estos animales es un signo de alegría. Llegó a recibirme, y le mostré el frasco, se acercó curioso, abrí el frasco y se le dio de leer. Para mi estupor, el animal retrocedió, se erizó, me sacó los dientes, me gruñó, presto a atacarme. Y yo cerré el frasquito de perfumes preciosos y me dije, miserable perro, si te hubiera traído un frasco lleno de excrementos, me habrías adorado y los hubieras probablemente devorado. El público es como tú. Hay que darle excremento bien escogido, nunca cosas preciosas, exquisitas y esenciales. That's a terrible thing, you know. That's a terrible statement. It's a terrible thing, you know. If Baudelaire indeed believed that, I mean, poor guy. Actually, I do believe that to a certain point, you know. Because Giselle, you know, I mean, playing Schumann and Liszt and Chopin, I'm never going to make it to the National Stadium. I'm not going to be like Shakira, playing there in some kind of tarima with amplification and charging 120,000 colones por entrada y llenar los 35 seats of the National Stadium, because there, nor Schumann, nor Liszt, nor Chopin, no Jacques Sagot have 35,000 followers. Not at all. Not in the most delirious of my days.
That's in the movement of the hip.
Yes, they're true. Hips don't lie. Hips don't. Actually, I like that song, you know. I like tremendously. I'm being a hypocrite here because the truth is I like Shakira very much. Oh, I like her very much, very much. Oh my God, is she wonderful. I almost said a bad word, but she's delicious, of course. Who wouldn't? I mean, there's no man who doesn't like Shakira, for Christ's sake. Anybody would have to, you know. I once wrote a very critical little essay about her on La Nación. It was called Nalguitas. So I basically, very critically, quite implacably, and again, perhaps hypocritically, I tell it to you because we are here. Everything is in between the family, in the family. It remains in the family. And I criticized it because I said she's a manufactured product. She's almost a kind of a merchandise, blah, 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 blah. Several years later, I had to play a concert in Bogota, Colombia. And I was in my hotel, and a journalist called me. And well, Mr. Sagot, we understand you're an international pianist. Well, I'm about to write here a little gacetilla, you know, for the newspaper, for the cultural section, so blah, 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 blah. And let me ask you one last question. How can it be that you trashed our national treasure, Shakira? It is a well-known fact here in Colombia. I mean, I'm not giving your address or your hotel because the crowd could go there and lapidate you. No, don't give anything, please. Keep the secret, please. Pero me sorprendió tanto. Yo me dije, manda huevo, ¿cómo es posible? Yo voy a tener un concierto de Bartók, esto pasó hace 8 años, y viene ¿cómo es posible? ¿Será que yo fui el único mal crítico que tuvo Shakira en 10 años? Y lo registraron así, ¿verdad? Me van a retirar la visa de entrada a Colombia. No un grato. Bueno, la verdad es que me encantan Nalguitas. Because it would be, you know. But how the hell did I ended up with Nalguitas talking about Oscar Wilde and the Nightingale? Yes, well, there you go. There you go. Thank you, Manuel. So, now, what a powerful, heartbreaking, awful reality Baudelaire exposes with this metaphor. El público es como tú, miserable perro. Nunca hay que darles esencias preciosas, hay que darle excremento bien escogido, pues si no te ladran y te muerden. No le tire perlas a los cerdos, ¿verdad? Esa es la idea. Well, I'm afraid this Nightingale made that mistake, you know, made that very serious mistake, you know. Her sacrifice was useless. had it been at least appreciated by the student, everything would have been beautiful. He would not have had the girl, but at least he would have understood the enormous sacrifice that had been honored with, and the whole gesture would have had a sense, a meaning. The way Oscar Wilde presents the things, everything is meaningless, or is it? What do you think, Isaac?
Looking through quotes, because I was trying to find something that resonates with that. Because I have this idea that Oscar Wilde had some sort of disdain for society, and he had the idea that society had somehow not grasped like essence. So I'm not surprised in the least that he would address the fact that for me the love would be something that you can discard, just throw away, like that kind of beauty that comes from love and sacrifice would somehow escape other people.
You're right. You're right.
He criticized the society, and it's like part of his wits was kind of like calling people off to their faces, and just like going around asking like treating everybody like he had disdain for that kind of, right? Like adoration for women, disdain for men, and that was
That strange blend of disdain, and yet he needed his audience.
That's what I think.
It was a kind of love-hate relationship. I mean, he disdained, he despised frivolity and vulgarity, and yet he needed that canaille. He needed that people. He needed desperately the love of all that bunch of idiots. He needed them. In a sense, he doesn't have the right to complain. I mean, society gave him everything that she could give. He was loved, he was appreciated, he was admired, he was imitated. And then he made some very wrong faux pas with the Marquis of Queensberry, but that's not society's fault. He just let himself be guided and hypnotized by this sort of Hamelin flutist that was Lord Douglas, Sir Alfred Douglas. Fatal mistake. Now, it is true, even if he was famous, even being famous and very much of a bestseller writer, I'm sure deep in his heart, he had the feeling that he was not really, truly understood. Not in the deepest layers of his soul. I'm sure. Because it had to be that way. I mean, basically, you have to be a very educated reader to really, to really enjoy and grasp the depth of his writing and the beauty of his writing. So no matter what, no matter how celebrated he was, I'm sure he was still dissatisfied. And I don't blame him. I'm sure he was right. Something, if Oscar Wilde had gone to France before the trial, he would have been an enormous celebrity in France. Homosexuality was totally a fashion in France. There was Marcel Proust, there was André Gide, there was Verlaine, Rimbaud, just to mention a few. They were all over the place. They were very well-recognized artists, very respected, I mean, do not forget this. Oscar Wilde had to live the worst, most severe, most puritanical part of the Victorian society, what you call the Victorian society. And the Queen Victoria was notorious for its moral rigidity, for its moral psycho-rigidity, sanctimonious and judgmental like hell. In France, he would have been the happiest guy in the world. Nobody would have taken to a trial for being homosexual. Half of the country was. I mean, there was no Queen Victoria in France. It was a very liberal place. Very, very liberal city in that sense. He would have no problem. In fact, he wrote Salome, his play, that's very decadent, deliciously decadent, Salome, with the dance of the seven veils. The great composer, a German composer, Richard Strauss, not the Strauss from the waltzes, another Strauss, wrote an opera called Salome, based on the legend of Salome. And he has this minute of this dance of the seven veils, that's the most erotic, sensuous, insidious music you have ever. Just look for that. Strauss, Dance of the Seven Veils. And you will tell me after that what you think of Strauss with double S at the end. Dance of the Seven Veils from Salome. And the opera by Strauss is based on the play by Oscar Wilde, Salome. By the way, it's not one of his great plays. No. It's for my taste, it's a bit too decadent, you know. But it triumphed in Paris. Salome was triumph in Paris because it was the right atmosphere for such a play, you know. So Oscar Wilde would have had no trouble had he gone into exile to France. But unfortunately, you know, he was in the worst possible society to be what he was. And you don't quarrel powerful people like that. It's always dangerous. I mean, sure, it was very brave, but bravery should be tempered by cautiousness. A little bit of prudence would not have hurt him, you know. So everything comes like in a fairy tale, you know. So it's beautiful, you know. The green lizard tells the butterfly tells the nightingale. It goes like that. There are structures in three. They always go in three. Oscar Wilde lingers on descriptions. This is an extremely descriptive tale. My roses are yellow, it answered, as yellow as the hair of the mermaid who sits upon an amber throne, and yellower than the daffodil that blooms in the meadow before the mower comes with its sight. But go to my brother who grows beneath the student's window, and perhaps he will give you what you want. It's always describing in very poetic terms. The whole prose is infused with lyricism and poetry. But the tree shook its head. My roses are red, it answered, as red as the feet of the dove, always as. Como, similes, as red as the feet of the dove, and redder than the great fans of coral that wave and wave in the ocean cavern. But the winter has chilled my veins, and the frost has nipped my buds, and the storm has broken my branches, and I shall have no roses at all this year. What was the name of this literary figure he's using here? We discussed it once with Poe, with Edgar Allan Poe. I will read that again. But the winter has chilled my veins, and the frost has nipped my buds, and the storm has broken my branches, and I shall have no roses at all this year. What is the connective particle that operates like connective tissue in this big syntactic construction? I go again. But the winter has chilled my veins, and the frost has nipped my buds, and the storm has broken my branches, and I shall have no roses all this. And, Well, that is called polysyndeton. It's a Greek word that polysyndeton means nudos, knots, nudos. Polysyndeton means a lot of nudos. En cada nudo es and. Pudo haber no puesto los and, pudo haber puesto comas. Pudo haber puesto, but the winter has chilled my veins. The frost has been my buds. The storm has broken my branches. I shall have no roses at all this year. No sale bonito. No sale bonito. El and gives a sort of it's more fluid. It gives a kind of a cataract. It's an enormous precipitation of things that fall upon you, you know. But the winter has chilled my veins, and the frost has nipped my bud, and the storm has broken my branches, and I shall have no roses at all this year. This is very poetry, very much poetry, you know, more than prose. Now, remember, did we read the Mask of the Red Death? Yes, we read the Mask of Red Death. Remember the final paragraph? Can someone find me in Isaac, the Mask of the Red Death? The text, ahí lo tenés, en inglés. ¿Puedes poner el puro final? Ay, qué bien, hermanos, si me haces ese favor. Because we have that very same rhetorical. It's a matter of rhetoric. And a literary figure of style called polysyndeton. Now, the opposite of polysyndeton is called asyndeton. La película A es negación. Apraxia, ataraxia, afasia, apatía, apolítico. A es no, ¿verdad? Pero polis es muchos, síndeton. Asíndeton es esto todo con comas. Polysyndeton es I.
Sí, ahí está. Sí.
Yes, let me read this. Just for the pleasure. And now was acknowledged the presence of the Red Death. He had come like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of the revel, and died each in the despairing posture of his fall, and the life of the ebony clock went out with that of the last of the gay, and the flames of the tripod expired, and darkness, and decay, and the Red Death held inimitable dominion over all. Suena muy lindo. And es como una catarata, ¿verdad? Well, same thing here with Oscar Wilde. Somehow, I have the feeling that polysyndetons are more frequent in the English than in the Spanish language, for all I have read. That's my feeling. Edgar Allan Poe uses it also in The Fall of the House of Usher, by the way. He's used very often. Be happy, cried the nightingale. Be happy, you shall have your red rose. It will build it out of music by moonlight and stain it with my own heart's blood. All that I ask of you in return is you will be a true lover, for love is wiser than philosophy, though she is wise, and mightier than power, though he is mighty. Flame-colored are his wings, and color like flame is his body. His lips are sweet as honey, and his breath is like frankincense. Everything is like, como. So that's what the nightingale tells the prince. No, the prince is not really a prince, he's a student. I'm making up things, you see. I'm already imagining that he's a prince, just because we are pretty much in the world of a fairy tale. I mean, this is in a certain way a fairy tale, in a way. In another way, it is the negation of a fairy tale. It's the very deconstruction, to use a fashionable word, of a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale a la inversa. The princess ends up being a stupid idiot. The prince is also completely myope, you know. And it is the opposite. No vivieron juntos felices y comieron codornices, no. Es todo lo contrario, ¿verdad? The story builds an enormous crescendo towards a tremendous anticlimax. That's the whole dynamic of the story. That's what Oscar Wilde wanted. I mean, he wants to shock us. He wants us to revolt against the state of things, you know? So it's an enormous crescendo towards a sort of love interruptus. It's a sort of, anticlimax. So, when she had finished her song, the student got up and pulled a notebook and a lead pencil out of his pocket. And look what an idiot he is. She has form, he said to himself. That is such... I think Oscar Wilde is targeting the literary critics very specifically. Oh, the form is rather well put together, but the form, the eternal story of the form and the content, There was a famous composer, a French composer, totally contemporary of Oscar Wilde, a little bit later than Wilde, Éric Satie. I have played Éric Satie here once. And he was a guy from Montmartre, from the Basilique du Sacré-Cœur de Montmartre. And Éric Satie, a critic once said, "Oh, Mr. Satie's piece, his music is certainly interesting and is melodically varied and harmonically well put together, but he seems to lack form." So Satie answered him by composing a work called Three Pieces in the Form of a Pear. Tres piezas en forma de pera. Pero Satie era un gran bromista, ni siquiera son tres, son 7. Y las llama tres piezas en forma de pera. Satie era un poco dadaísta ya. Muy, muy humorista era. The titles he put to his works. Embriones disecados. Preludios flácidos para un perro. What can that mean, for Christ's sake? It's beautiful music, to be sure, And he wrote a series of short pieces, deportes y diversiones. Uno es el rugby, otro es el fútbol, otro es la natación, el baloncesto, el polo, esto, el otro, el ajedrez, el póker. Y cada piecita se supone representa uno de esos deportes. He was a very funny man, But yes, 3 pieces in form of a pear. She has form, he said to himself, and he walked away through the grove. That cannot be denied to her. But has she got feeling? That's the ultimate absurdity. Does the nightingale has feeling? Who can have more feeling than the nightingale? The student's love is not real love. He's kind of infatuated with the girl. Yeah, sure, that he is. That much can be said. But he's not in deep love with her. He forgets her immediately. He discards her after she disappoints him, But has she got feeling? I'm afraid not. In fact, she's like most artists. She's all style without any sincerity. Again, Oscar Wilde was attacked sometime by critics of his, because he was so stylish. This is all style, tremendous style, And that's one kind of review he received many times. Well, Mr. Wilde's handling of form is impeccable. His prose is always very well constructed, but he seems to lack substance. He seems to lack humanity. That kind of bullshit, He had to hear that many times in his life. So here he's very specifically addressing the critiques who trashed him, So, in fact, she's like most artists. She's all style without any sincerity. She would not sacrifice herself for others after what she did. The little nightingale, She would not sacrifice herself for others. She thinks merely of music. And everybody knows that the arts are selfish. The arts are selfish? No, the arts are not. So maybe the artists are selfish. And are they really? I guess some are and some are not. Still, it must be admitted that she has some beautiful notes in her voice. A typical critical review. They trash you, and at the end, still, it should be noted that the work has some strong points that deserve to be, mentioned. That typical kind of thing, when you have been trashed, and the reviewer, the critic, has to establish a little, so he doesn't end up being the villain. So he tries to balance a little bit. Still, it was a good effort on the part of Mr. Sagot, and if he perseveres, I'm sure he would sometime produce something deserving to be read. That kind of stupidity, So that they're not perceived are being too negative or too sarcastic, so they try to build. They do it for themselves. They do it for themselves. What a pity is that they do not mean anything or do any practical good. Obsessed with the practical, things, the student. And then again, all night long she sang, and the thorn went deeper and deeper. As again, English cannot be replaced in those senses. Pierced her heart, pierced. And the thorn went deeper and deeper. La I es una sonoridad punzocortante. I. I remember talking to our great writer, Joaquín Gutiérrez. I had the enormous privilege of being his student in 2 courses about Shakespeare, because Joaquín Gutiérrez made some unbelievable translations of Shakespeare to the Spanish language. Respecting the endecasílabo, 11 sílabas, the rhymes, the metric, the rhythm, everything, bien podría ser la mejor traducción de Shakespeare al español, la de Joaquín Gutiérrez. Tradujo Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear, and was it Julius Caesar, perhaps? I don't remember the 4th one. And at some point he was exasperated, and I saw him in his office, and he was like biting his nails and pulling his hair. What's going on with Don Joaquin? Well, I'm stuck with this translation. I'm stuck because look, here Shakespeare says, and he took his dagger and killed him. And kill, I es punzo cortante. Pero ¿qué podía poner en español? Lo mata, una palabra roma, una palabra sin filo, mata. Bueno, Joaquín, asesina. No, porque asesina ya son 3 sílabas, entonces me descodala todo el verso. Necesito a un bisílabo que sea como kill, pero mata. Bueno, no sé, se lo truena, don Joaquín. No, eso no le dije nunca. Recuerdo una película de esas de Cantinflas de los 40 que se llama Romeo y Julieta. Entonces cuando Mercucio es asesinado, que era el amigo íntimo de Romeo y Julieta, llega Cantinflas. Todo el mundo esperaba un gran verso shakespeariano. Y se agacha y dice: mira nomás, cuate, te tronaron. ¿Cómo no va uno a reventarse? Mira nomás, cuate, te tronaron. La deflación de la gran retórica shakespeariana. So went deeper in her breast. So she sang first of the birth of love in the heart of a boy and a girl. And on the topmost spray of the rose tree there blossomed a marvelous rose, petal following petal, as song followed song. Pale was it. The figure, pale was it. The normal way of it was pale, ¿verdad? Pálido era pálido. Esa inversión sintáctica se llama hiperbatón. That's a useful word to know. I don't know in English. Hyperbaton, I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, it is a Greek word, so it must exist in English to be sure. I just don't know how to pronounce it. Hiperbatón. Un ejemplo de Gustavo Adolfo Bécquer. Del salón en el ángulo oscuro, en una de sus rimas. Del salón en el ángulo oscuro. Lo normal es decir en el ángulo oscuro del salón. Del salón en el ángulo oscuro. No, en el ángulo oscuro del salón. Hablemos en español. Pero es un poeta. Para lograr la rima a veces es muy útil invertir. Y esa es la solución. Entonces, eso dice tanto. Pale was it. Pero es tan lindo. Now, Manuel, tell me if it is not beautiful. Pale was it. I mean, you can, sure, there's nothing wrong. It was pale. It's just kind of, it is peatonal. Era pálido. Pálida era. That's beautiful, you know. Now, just don't use it with your girlfriend. because she's going to end up thinking you're crazy, you know. El caso típico de los pronombres postergados o pospuestos. Señorita, vila al bajar del tren, améla tan pronto la vi, seguíla hasta este cuarto oscuro, y el amor quisiera ser con vosotros. Si uno sale con eso, llaman a la policía, ¿verdad? Si decís una pachucada, posiblemente te aplauden. Pero señorita, vila al bajar del tren, la vi al bajar del tren. ¿Qué es el vila? Es el pronombre puesto después del participio pasado del verbo ver. Vila al bajar del tren. Seguíla hasta este cuarto, hasta del salón en el ángulo oscuro, para seguir invirtiendo cosas, ¿verdad? Y améla desde el primer momento en que vila. No, ¿cómo? No, ya con eso, ya ahí no haces nada, Faustino. You don't have a chance. But in the world of poetry, it is very beautiful. Pale was it at first, as the mist that hangs over the river, pale as the feet of the morning. The feet of the morning. Eso es una personificación, a prosopopeya. The morning has no feet, does it? Or maybe it does. It's taken from La Odisea, from Homero. La aurora de dedos rosa. ¿Sí? La aurora, la de dedos rosa, para referirse al sol que sale rosado, los deditos rosa de la aurora, que era una diosa, ¿verdad? Bueno, aquí es más o menos lo mismo, la misma idea. Cuando dice... pale as the feet of the morning. Qué lindo. Los pies de la mañana son pálidos entonces. Sí, amaneceres pálidos, ¿verdad? And silver as the wings of the dawn. Y plateados como las alas del atardecer. Entonces, las alas del atardecer es como un ser alado. As the shadow of a rose in a mirror of silver. As the shadow of a rose in a mirror of silver, como la sombra de una rosa en el espejo de plata. As the shadow of a rose in a water pool, como la sombra de una rosa en el estanque, so was the rose that blossomed on the topmost spray of the tree. Esto casi que podría ser escrito en versos y funcionaría, vos sabés. Valdría la pena intentarlo. Si uno lo pone en versos, esto se sostiene como poema. Sería muy lindo. Some people have done that, you know. Yeah, that has been done. With our poet, Lili Guardia, made a poetic version. He rewrote the whole thing. A very beautiful story by Yolanda Oreamuno. And Lili Guardia, who was her prima, by the way, her cousin, lo reescribió todo en forma de columna. Con poema. Queda perfecto. Pareciera que fue originalmente escrito en poema. Es impresionante. Yo conocí a Yolanda no, murió 6 años antes que yo naciera, pero a Lili sí la conocí. Gran señora. ¿Cómo estamos? Well, I don't know. You have questions? Opinions? Feelings?
Just a fun fact. Hyperbaton in English is hyperbate.
Hyperbaton. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you very much. Hyperbaton. Well, that makes sense. Gracias. No, well, hyperbaton. Prosopopeya. Polysyndeton. You have to keep track of these things. You have to write down these things.
Reminding me of my literature classes.
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's good. So the nightingale pressed closer against the thorn, and the thorn touched her heart. Touched. No da lo mismo en español. Touch her heart. And a fierce pang of pain. Pang of pain. Come on. The guy is making music with words, clearly, you know, evidently. He's operating as a musician that simply uses words and phonemas instead of notes to make music, you know. One can make music with words. You know, every song attempts to do that. And poetry certainly tries to do that all the time and with more or less success. Even prose. For me, this is poetry in disguise, actually. If you want my opinion, this is poetry in disguise. How do you feel about the story? How you feel about that conclusion? That awful conclusion. Giselita, ¿qué sentiste? La rosa es despreciada y el alumno la tira en un caño inmundo, lleno de baba, basura y saliva, y además pasa una carreta y la estripa. Esa flor que fue teñida con la sangre de un ruiseñor que dio su vida es tirada no a la calle, a un caño, to the gutter, a la alcantarilla prácticamente. Y pasa además encima un carro y la tritura. Oscar Wilde no puede ser más cruel. Es indignant, ¿verdad? ¿Qué sentís, Faustinito?
¿Qué decir?
Golpea, ¿verdad?
Una náusea.
Sí.
Tristeza, porque después de lo que costó que se...
Pues una muerte lenta la del... El único en este cuento que entendió que era el amor es el ruiseñor. Sí. Y dio su vida por ello. Es el único que entendió. Ni el estudiante, ni la chica, ni el chambelán, ni el hijo del chambelán que usa hebillas de plata, y esa es su gran cosa. Hoy en día hubiera usado un Lamborghini rojo descapotable, pero ya hebillas de plata, pues hay que estar loco para usar de eso. Pero el equivalente sería que llega con un Ferrari. Yo no sé nada de carros, ¿verdad? Pero para hablar de carros fálicos, ¿verdad? Carros que solamente... Sí, Manuel, espero que no tengas uno de esos chuños. El tipo que anda haciendo rugir motores y exhibiendo carros, pobrecitas las mujeres que se cuiden de ellos porque tienen que estar compensando alguna grave deficiencia fálica. Brum, 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 brum. Soy tan macho, soy macho, puro macho aquí, 100%, Tarzán y Schwarzenegger y Rambo en uno solo. You know, macho, macho. ¿Qué están compensando con eso? Si estuvieran seguros de su virilidad, no andarían en esos desplantes. Si yo fuera una mujer, sería muy desconfiada de ese tipo de individuo, ¿verdad? Sí, hoy en día no serían hebillas de plata, sería un Lamborghini rojo descapotable. Solo una vez he visto uno en la vida. Una chica que atendía en un restaurante aquí de la zona, más hacia la zona allí de los restaurantes, ¿verdad? Tan linda, tan linda. Le habían puesto Mandalay. Mandalay se llamaba. Le regalé un libro, no me acuerdo cuál, y le puse mi dirección, según yo me iba a llamar algún día. No, si yo soy más tonto que el ruiseñorcillo, ¿verdad? Y un día salgo, y ustedes se van a reír de mí, pero por algo lo digo. Salgo y veo un chico, sí, en un Lamborghini rojo, con solo 2 asientos y descapotable esperándola. Iba con un amigo, ahí mismo le dije, no, Alejandro, tiene más esperanzas una hormiga de cazar un león que yo de... ¿Cómo voy a competir con un Lamborghini? Yo ni sé manejar, ni he tenido nunca carro. Y según yo, por un librillo con una dedicatoria y le dediqué y le hice un corazoncillo así. Debe haberlo vendido ya en el Erial. Me da miedo de ir al Erial, de miedo de topármelo ahí con toda dedicatoria. Lo debe haber plateado. Sí.
No, pero el libro está bonito. A mí me conquistaron una vez con un librito y una notita dentro igual con los datos de la persona para llámame. Literalmente decía, llámame, soy tal, no sé dónde.
Por eso sos Franklin. Por eso sos el gran Franklin. Pero ¿qué vos crees? ¿Que todos los hombres son como vos? ¿Y todos los seres humanos son así como vos? No.
Es que, o sea, fue curioso. No sé, me gustó. Estuvo curioso eso de que llegó un librito y dije, wow. Y ahora encontrar a alguien que lea, re difícil.
Sí. ¿Ustedes sienten que este cuento es actual? Sí, Isaac.
Dice, ¿cómo se siente con el cuento? Yo sí, es una decepción, pero that's human nature too. That's a mirror.
At least that's human society. I don't know if nature, but society for sure it is, yes.
I see both phases of human nature, let's say. The Nightingale being like the kindest, purest feelings that can come out of us.
Yeah.
Or like everything that is living and breathing, let's say. And then just that frivolity of like not really giving any attention to love, not giving any attention to
Yeah.
it's like it's like I go back to the Principito, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that's the whole beauty in itself, right?
Yeah.
Because we can miss the point. And he actually focuses on materialism and selfishness, but at the same time practicality, because we lose the point of feeling. But for me, it's beautiful in the sense of what the Nightingale does.
Yeah.
Even though at the end it's trampled and thrown into the gutter, but the beauty is exactly how selfless this was, how unselfish the Nightingale was, and it's beautifully written. And this is part of his stories are usually in that sense.
Yeah.
There's a criticism to what we can miss by how we deal with the world.
Yeah.
And how we just succumb to other aspects.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Lily. Thank you for your words. You're absolutely right. Well, the Nightingale was above all generous, magnanimous to the point of self-sacrifice. And for him, death was a very reasonable price for true love. He doesn't complain. He never said this is unjust. He goes on his own free will, and does what he does. He doesn't act like a martyr. There's no martyrdom here. That would have been histrionic and kind of dubious. He's just natural. He truly believes that his death is very worthwhile in the name, for the sake of true love. Except there is no true love here. I know it's a misfire in a way, isn't it?
Yes, there's a true love. It's the Nightingale's love.
Yeah, you're right.
When you compare it to the others, of course, what the student had, that was not true love.
I guess, one of the things Wilde wanted to convey to us is a creator, an artist, a poet, a playwright like him, put his whole being into his work. His whole soul, he created with his own blood, He just gave himself completely in his work. Then to be trashed by some stupid critique, perhaps, or indifferent reader, the Nightingale is, for me, first and foremost, an allegory of the artist, I think. Although it can be widened, yeah.
I guess for me a question is, would the Nightingale have gone through the sacrifice if she had known what was going to happen to the rose? Probably yes, because that was her whole being was put into it.
Yes, you're right.
And I really like the fact that she doesn't complain.
No, not at all. She makes an act of faith. She believes her sacrifice is going to be fruitful. But she would have done it even if she had known that it's going to be.
Because she's true.
She's true, yeah. So is the artist.
Very idealistic.
Yeah. Even if he is crushed by the critique, the artist will keep doing his thing until he dies. If he is a true artist, he will not stop playing recitals or publishing books for a bad review. Because his life consists of writing and playing the piano. That's the essence of his life. You know? No critique is going to stop him from doing that. He would not be a real artist if he would.
Sounds to me like a great way of maybe wrapping it up.
That's true.
Would you like to maybe play something?
Oh, nothing can be as beautiful as Oscar Wilde. I think we should, don't you think?
No, because I guess I was going to ask, what is it that you love more about playing the piano?
I guess the act of communicating, the miracle of communicating, but not communicating at a very deep level of the soul. I don't find any other way that I can communicate as much and so effectively, or so I think. So I guess that's what wonders me, is the fact that I can communicate real inside. And when I'm very moved with the music I'm playing and sincerely feel moved, I have the guarantee that the audience is also moved. And when I'm kind of off and not into the music for whatever reason, then the audience is not into the music. I mean, it is like a 2 plus 2 is 4. You know, that's a mathematical rule. If you're feeling the music, the audience will enjoy it with you. If you don't, you will short circuit that communication and nothing will happen. It will be a totally forgettable recital. I mean, nobody's going to get hurt. It's just there will be no miracle, that's all. It's great to have you here, guys. Isaac, Franklin, Manuel, mandarle un gran saludo a Johanita. Mandarla a leer esto como ejercicio literario. La echo de menos. Y hoy no llegaron nuestros amigos, los señores, pues me habían dicho que no iban a llegar. Varias personas la vez pasada me dijeron que no iban a llegar. Entonces yo hoy esperaba poca audiencia, pero no importa. Estas conferencias se hacen de todas formas. Doesn't matter si tenemos los 35,000 de Shakira o solamente 3. No cambian de nalguitas.
Cada vez que la vea me va a acordar de usted.
Sí, claro. Pues sea la verdad, se ha dicho, es lo que ella, bueno, por lo menos vendía. No sé si ahora todavía tienen alguitas o no. Yo no las sigo mucho. Están ahí. Sí, pero ya seguro bastante reconstruidas, ¿no?
Bueno, muchísimas gracias. Voy a aprovechar la oportunidad.
Claro.
Y que don Faustino también está acá para invitar una vez al evento de Faustino, que va a ser el martes 15 de julio. Si ustedes ahí tienen la información, pues la vamos a ver también en el correo. Ya, bueno, va a ser una buena ocasión también para volver a compartir con Jack, la única en julio, de hecho, ya que don Jack va a estar haciendo la lectura y la moderación de este evento, va a comentar también, y bueno, ahí van a contar con el autor y seguir escuchando sobre voces costarricenses, ¿verdad? Así que más muchas gracias a este evento. Y posteriormente, cuando ya tengamos la agenda de agosto, bueno, vamos a comenzar el 12 de agosto, pues ya está decidido, pero cuando tengamos bien la agenda del arte, pues vamos a estar mandando también por correo. Si en este tiempo les da un poco de nostalgia, ¿verdad? Si extrañan a escuchar a Jack o quieren repasar por ahí algunos...
I will miss you guys. I can't tell you that much. I will miss you sorely. And I'm being honest here.
In the meantime, you can watch the videos. Ya pueden ver también todas las sesiones que hemos tenido hasta ahora. A excepción de la de hoy. También si tienen curiosidad de los otros eventos literarios que hemos hecho, que hemos visitado acá, también las grabaciones están en la segunda columna, ¿verdad? Entonces invitados a visitar el canal de YouTube de la Mark Twain. Ya va a hacer el favor también de reenviar esta información en el correo.
Ah, bueno.
Sí, Giselita, sí.
Muchas gracias, de verdad, por ser.
Gracias a todos, gracias.
La tercera temporada de Insight de este año.
Mis eternas gracias a Lili. Lili es una visionaria y todo esto se ha hecho posible únicamente gracias a ella. Isaac también y Franklin son maravillosos también. Pero Lili es la dueña de esta pulpería, sin ella no se hace nada.
El dueño no puede hacer nada sin
Ya habíamos establecido que todos los elementos son súper importantes. La visión,
Sí.
con el arte, con también el público, ¿verdad? El calor del
Y
público.
yo sí quiero decir, Jack, gracias por compartir hoy una obra tuya, el tango de
Sí, sí, no me salió bonito, pero, porque no lo toco desde el recital, entonces lo tengo medio rumbradillo, pero el tanguillo tiene lo suyillo. Sí. Lo voy a grabar y
Gracias a todos por venir.
Gracias, Lili.
Nos vemos pronto.
Nos vemos, muy chiquita, nos vemos pronto, el 15 de seguro.
Claro que sí.